Hey guys, this video is about lesson 7.5, and you are comparing factors and products. So what do we mean by factors and products? Remember, a product is going to be the answer to a multiplication problem. So if you look at these three example problems I pulled from your text, we got 7/8, 4/5, and 3/5. Those are all products. Now, the factor is the number that, or the numbers that are being multiplied together. So if we look at this first example up here, whole number 5 multiplied by 7/8, we need to figure out whether or not our answer is going to be more, less, or equal to 7/8. So we want to see if it's going to be more, less, or equal to 7/8. The way we figured that out is if you look at the three numbers that are in this number sentence here, we have a whole number 5, we have a 7/8, and then we have a 7/8. The number that's not repeated, okay, so the number that's not the product is 5, and that's going to tell us whether or not we're going to end up with something more than 7/8 or less than 7/8. If the other factor is more than 1, it's going to be more than the product. So 5 times 7/8 is going to be more than 7/8. And if you weren't sure, you could check that out and actually multiply 5 times 7/8 and then simplify it and see if you get something bigger than 7/8. So let's go ahead and actually try that. We'll just do it. We'll just multiply it out and see what we get. So if I do 5 times 7/8, just like before in previous videos, I'm going to put a 1 under that whole number. I'm going to multiply my numerators by my numerators and get 35. And I'm going to multiply my 1 by my 8, and I get 35 over 8, or 35/8. Well, 35/8 is definitely bigger than 7/8, okay? So either way you reason it out, you can see that 5 times 7/8 will, in fact, be greater than 7/8. All right, so let's take a look at, we got 4/5 times 7/7. So let's examine the problem here. We need to know what the product is in this problem. The product's going to be 4/5. But we want to know whether multiplying the two factors is going to give us a product that's going to be more than 4/5, less than 4/5, or equal to 4/5. So I'm going to look at the fraction that isn't 4/5. So the fraction that is not 4/5 here is 7/7. And we should know by now that 7 over 7 is just the same thing as 1. All right. And 4/5 times 1 is going to be equal to 4/5 because it's going to equal 4/5. Let's take a look at, this last problem down here. We have 7/8 multiplied by 3/5. Will it be more or less than 3/5? So the product's going to be equal to 3/5, more than 3/5, or greater than 3/5. And the number of fraction that's going to determine that is going to be this 7/8 right here. If the 7/8 is equal to 1, then it's going to be equal to 3/5. If it's more than 1, it's going to be more than 3/5. If it's less than 1, it's going to be less than 3/5. Now, 7/8 is actually less than 1 whole because it takes 8/8. That's a very bad looking 8. Sorry about that. It takes 8/8 to make a whole, and 7/8 is 1/8 smaller than 8/8. So in this case, the answer would be less than. Okay. Now, there's another way that you can do this. And in your Go Math book, if you looked at page 447, you'll notice that there was a model of multiplying a whole number by a fraction. And that can help us answer this question too, whether or not our product's going to be more, less, or equal to the other factor. So I'm going to give you guys an example of that. So let's say, for instance, you want to know if 3 times 4/5 is going to be more, less, or equal to 4/5. Okay. So we can use a number line to help us kind of see this. So I'm going to draw my number line down here. And I'm going to label it with my whole numbers. So I got 0, 1, 2, 3, and it's just going to go on forever. And then because I'm dealing with fifths here, I'm going to make sure there are 5 sections in between each whole number, or like 5 spaces, because we're dealing with fifths. And we don't quite make it to the whole number 4 there. And keep in mind, guys, in an ideal world, my number line would be equal and all the spaces would be equal, but since I'm hand drawing it, it's not going to be perfect. And your models won't be perfect either, but it's the concept that matters, okay? So let's first figure out where 4/5 would be. So we got 1/5 is going to be right here. So 4/5 is going to be right there. So that's 1/4. But notice that we're multiplying 4/5 by 3. So we're going to want to make 3 of those skips. So I'm going to count out another 4/5. So I got 1, 2, 3. So 4/5 goes to here. So now I have 2 4/5, and then I have to do one more 4/5. And so 4/5 is going to land me over here in between the whole numbers 2 and 3. And so we can see that if this is where 4/5 is, and this is where 3 times 4/5 is, then 3 times 4/5 is going to be more than 4/5. So you can use a number line to help you see that as well. The main thing that you need to make sure that you can distinguish are fractions that are more than 1, less than 1, and equal to 1. So this 4/5 would be less because the numerator 4 is less than the 5. 5/5 would be equal to 1 because the numerator and the denominator are the same. And remember, we can divide the top by the bottom, the numerator by the denominator, and we would get 5 divided by 5, which equals 1. So that's another reminder that when the numerator and denominator are equal, it's going to equal 1. And then if you have an improper fraction like we do here, where the numerator is larger than the denominator, then we know that it's going to be more than 1. So this would be less than 1, this would be equal to 1, and this would be more than 1. And that's going to determine whether or not your product is going to be equal to itself, more than itself, or less than itself. So I'll leave you with one last example. So let's imagine We have 4/7. We want to multiply it by 2/3. We don't even want an answer here. We just want to know whether or not 4/7 times 2/3 is going to give us a product more than 2/3, less than 2/3, or equal to 2/3. And again, the key to figuring this out. So one of these fractions is not like the others. That's 4/7. That's the key to the whole problem. We got to figure out, is 4/7 more than 1, less than 1, or equal to 1? And because the numerator 4 is less than the denominator 7, it's less than 1. And so that's going to make our problem here, 4/7 times 2/3, less than 2/3. So I hope this helps. Please text, email me, invite me to hang out. I'll do my best to answer questions as fast as I can for your 7.5 work. Good luck, and I will see you on our next Google Meet.